Have you ever noticed how utterly draining it is when you constantly try to explain yourself to the world? It feels as if the more you speak to prove you are right, worthy, or clear-minded, the further you drift from your true self. We live in a noisy society that constantly pressures you to respond, justify your choices, and force others to see your worth. But as you and I look at this cycle, we see the trap. The harder you chase their recognition, the more you lose that deep, sacred connection to your own inner world. The legendary psychiatrist Carl Jung, who spent his life exploring the deepest layers of human psychology, pointed out a brilliant paradox about this very struggle. Real maturity only begins when you stop looking for your value in the eyes of others and finally turn back toward yourself. Carl Jung called this lifelong journey individuation, a beautiful process where you step away from artificial social roles to confront the deepest core of your being. In that quiet space, your personal truth no longer needs to be defended with loud words. Listen closely. The very moment you grow quiet and focus inward is when your life truly starts to change. When you reclaim your energy from constant explanations and roles you do no longer need to play, something remarkable happens. Slowly, almost effortlessly, things begin to fall back into their rightful place. All the things that do not belong to you will naturally start to drift away. Suddenly, the right opportunities begin to find you, and your path ahead becomes clearer than ever before. We are going to explore why, according to Jungian psychology, choosing silence and self-focus can put your life in order in a way that feels almost magical. First, you must understand how silence helps you escape your social mask. It is a strange thing, but people usually speak the most when they feel the least secure. Whether you are in a tense argument or a casual meeting, your immediate instinct is to explain yourself, prove you are right, and demand the respect you feel you deserve. If you take a closer look, you will notice that most of those hurried words do not actually come from a place of inner peace. Instead, they stem from a deep, anxious need to protect your image in the eyes of everyone around you. Jung defined this social mask as the persona, a psychological shield you wear to survive in the world. Now, this mask is not inherently evil. It is a necessary tool that allows you to function in society. After all, you cannot speak to your boss the same way you talk to your best friend, and you cannot act in a corporate boardroom the way you behave when you are completely alone at home. By using the persona, you can smoothly adjust how you present yourself to match any given situation. However, the trouble starts when this mask fits so tightly that you begin to lose touch with the real face underneath it. When this happens, your daily life slowly turns into a theatrical stage, and you end up wasting your valuable energy performing rather than actually living. Think about a situation you probably know all too well. You post your thoughts online, and you immediately begin checking your phone every few minutes for notifications. If someone dares to disagree, you feel a desperate urge to explain yourself and prove your point. Strangely enough, you often do not even care about the original topic anymore once an online argument starts. What actually bothers you is the underlying fear that your reputation is under attack. You desperately want to protect your image and make sure others still view you as smart, rational, and respectable. But in those tense moments, the voice defending you is not your authentic self, it is just the mask. This is precisely why choosing to stay silent can feel like a profound act of liberation. When you refuse to react instantly, you starve that mask of the energy it needs to control you, opening up a quiet space where something fascinating begins to happen. Suddenly, you realize that most of the heavy pressure you carried did not come from life itself, but from your endless struggle to maintain a specific image. The moment you stop defending that illusion, your mind instantly feels lighter, resembling an actor who finally steps off the stage after a grueling performance. Jung beautifully captured this when he wrote that your social mask represents everything you are not in reality, yet it is what you and others mistakenly believe to be your true identity. Since everyone buys into the act, this mask becomes incredibly convincing, trapping you in a role that is not really yours. Over time, you get comfortable being perceived a certain way, reacting exactly how society expects you to react. The line separating your performances from your authentic self slowly starts to blur until you can no longer tell them apart. Fortunately, silence holds a unique power to shatter this exhausting cycle. By refusing to rush into speech, you free yourself from the obligation to play your usual character. You grant yourself a precious few seconds to simply watch your own mind. Imagine being in a heated argument. Instead of firing back a defense, You choose to pause, noticing the physical warmth rising in your chest and the urgent thoughts demanding a reply. Instead of riding that wave of reaction, you choose to sit still and let the heated moment pass. What unfolds next is a fascinating shift in perspective. All those sharp words you were preparing to say suddenly seem entirely pointless, and you realize they were just defensive reflexes of an ego trying to guard its reputation. We see this play out constantly at work, where people feel a desperate pressure to speak up in every meeting, offering half-baked opinions just to stay visible. They worry that staying quiet makes them look worthless, yet the paradox is that those with genuine inner confidence always speak the least. They observe, they listen, and they speak only when it matters. Because their words are born from conscious reflection rather than the anxious reactions of the persona, they carry immense weight when they finally do speak. Silence completely shifts how everyone around you perceives your presence. When you leave open spaces in a conversation, others naturally feel compelled to fill that void with their own curiosity. They begin to wonder about your deep thoughts and quiet feelings, which grants you a subtle but potent form of soft power. This is not a toxic power used to control others, but a beautiful state of self-possession. When you no longer feel the urge to speak excessively, it shows you have outgrown the childish need to prove your worth. The most profound shift occurs when you stay quiet long enough to finally hear the inner truths that social chatter always drowns out. Suddenly, much deeper questions rise to the surface of your awareness. You begin to ask yourself what you truly want out of this life, what you are actually living for, and whether your reactions are genuine or just born from a fear of judgment. You and I know these essential questions never show up in the middle of a noisy crowd. They only visit you in absolute stillness. Therefore, choosing silence is not about running away from the world. It is a vital step back that lets you see the exhausting social roles you have been acting out. Realizing your true self does not need to be constantly defended is the beautiful reward of stepping away from the struggle to protect your public image. You begin to understand that your soul does not need to prove anything. It simply needs to be lived. The very moment you step out from behind that heavy social mask, your real journey of self-discovery begins. As the mask loosens in the quiet, an entirely new landscape reveals itself to you. This is not the loud outer world, but the sacred inner realm where all the parts of yourself you once ran from finally find their voice. Second, you will find that silence is a golden opportunity to face the shadow of your soul. If you ever feel deeply unsettled when left alone in absolute silence, understand there is a profound psychological reason behind that discomfort. It has nothing to do with the physical quietness of the room or the lack of external sounds. Rather, it is because the moment the world goes quiet, your own inner voices finally get loud enough to be heard. You might use endless distractions to avoid these voices during a busy day. Staying late at work, scrolling social media, engaging in empty talk, or leaving the television on all night are perfect shields. All of this noise acts like a violent wind, constantly stirring the surface of your mind, so you never have to look deeper. As long as the water of your mind is constantly whipped up by daily distractions, you can never hope to see what lies at the very bottom. But when you allow silence to settle in, the choppy surface of your inner lake slowly becomes still and clear. It is in this profound stillness that the hidden truths buried deep within you begin to rise to the surface. Jungian psychology defines these rising, buried aspects of yourself as the shadow of the soul. Do not mistake the shadow for something evil or supernatural. It is simply the collection of all the traits, painful memories, and hidden desires you have suppressed. It holds your shame, your hidden jealousy, and the weaknesses you hide from everyone. During your childhood, you were carefully taught how to act like a good person by being polite, obedient, and relentlessly positive. However, this early socialization forced an entire half of your human nature directly into the dark, unconscious corners of your mind. Anything about you that did not match the ideal image your parents and teachers wanted was quickly banished from your active awareness. Jung pointed out that this exact rejection of your true self is how your shadow is built. Picture it as a locked closet inside the home of your mind. While the outside of your house looks beautiful and organized, behind that locked door lies a lifetime of unexpressed feelings waiting to be freed. By stepping into stillness, you find the key that unlocks that long-forgotten door. The very moment you stop obsessing over the demands of the external world, your mind naturally drifts back to the pieces of yourself you tried to forget. You have likely experienced this heavy feeling late at night. Your phone is face down, the house is completely quiet, and suddenly a vivid, painful memory resurfaces out of nowhere. You might remember a harsh sentence you deeply regret saying, an ancient anger you never fully processed, or a terrifying question about why you are so afraid of your own life. These raw thoughts make you want to instantly grab your phone and find another quick distraction. When you feel lost in the quiet, Carl Jung would remind us that this exact moment is actually one of the most powerful opportunities you will ever have for true personal growth. It is only when you finally confront your shadow that it begins to lose its silent, invisible grip on your life. As Jung famously explained, you do not find enlightenment by simply pretending to be a being of pure light, but by bravely making your inner darkness conscious. Think about it. We have all seen someone who always acts perfectly calm and nice, only to suddenly explode in a sudden, shocking rage. But if you and I look beneath the surface, we see that this anger did not just appear from nowhere. It was slowly building up every time they forced themselves to stay quiet and whispered, "I must not get angry." You tell yourself that you have to be stronger than your pain, but those buried feelings do not just vanish into thin air. Instead, they sink quietly into the deepest chambers of your mind, forming what we call the shadow. The longer you ignore them, the more the pressure builds, until they inevitably burst back to the surface with a force that is almost impossible to control. But when you finally allow yourself a few moments of complete stillness to look inward, everything begins to change. By daring to admit to yourself that you carry anger, deep hurt, and vulnerability, you take away their violent power. In that quiet space, your emotions are finally acknowledged, gently understood, and slowly woven back into the very core of who you truly are. It is fascinating how this very same psychological process is woven into ancient spiritual traditions, like the classic narratives we find in the Bible. If you look closely, so many sacred paths begin with a deliberate step away from the crowd and into total quiet. You see Moses encountering the divine deep in the lonely desert, and Elijah catching that gentle whisper only after the terrifying storm had completely faded. Even Jesus spent 40 days entirely alone in the harsh wilderness, confronting the deepest struggles of the human spirit before his work could begin. These stories are far more than religious symbols. They map out a profound psychological awakening. The spiritual path is never found in loud noises, but in the stillness of your own internal desert. Think of this desert as a powerful symbol of absolute emptiness, a quiet sanctuary where all your daily distractions fade away, and you are forced to look at your own reflection. It is in this exact space of vulnerability that your raw truth finally begins to show itself. You might find that when you muster up the courage to face your inner shadow, you suddenly feel a strange sense of freedom washing over you. This liberation does not happen because your flaws magically disappear, but because you no longer waste your life trying to hide them. When you clearly recognize and understand your weaknesses, they can no longer pull your strings. By accepting that fear is a part of you, you stop letting it control your life, building a rare kind of inner strength. True resilience does not belong to those who wear a flawless mask, but to you when you dare to look directly into the messy, complex reality of your own mind. There is a beautiful paradox to this path. The more honest you are about your own darkness, the more peaceful your everyday life becomes. The moment you stop running from who you are, you no longer have to waste your precious energy fighting a quiet, exhausting war against yourself. So, when you choose to step into silence, you are not just taking a break from the busy world outside, you are actually coming home to meet your own soul. In that deep quiet, you will start to see the old hurts you used to run from, the feelings you buried, and the surprising strengths you never knew you had. In many ways, silence acts as an unblinking, honest mirror that reveals exactly who you are beneath all the noise. When you gather the courage to stare directly into that reflection, you will begin to realize that your inner darkness is not an enemy to be defeated, but a forgotten part of yourself, waiting to be understood. As you listen to these words right now, you might find yourself remembering a time when you were completely alone in the quiet, and suddenly, a wave of avoided emotions washed over you. If these words speak to your heart, consider taking a moment to leave a short comment below. You could share something simple, like telling us that you discovered your deepest fears during a very quiet, lonely night. You might want to write, "Silence helped me understand my mind," or simply, "I am finally learning to face my shadow." Putting a small, honest thought like this into words can be incredibly powerful because it reminds us that we are not walking this path alone. Your story could easily become a guiding light for someone else who is struggling to deal with their own inner darkness right now, but simply recognizing your shadow is only the very first step on this path. Once you find the courage to stand your ground and look directly at it, a profound transformation begins to take root within you. All that mental and emotional energy you used to scatter in 1,000 directions slowly starts flowing back to your center. First and foremost, learning to focus on your own well-being is the ultimate way to reclaim your lost energy. When you feel completely exhausted by life, it is rarely because of hard work. It is because your mind is constantly being pulled in a dozen different directions all at once. The moment your eyes open in the morning, your energy begins to slip away. You feel the urge to reply to a text. A friend needs you to listen to their problems. A coworker wants advice, or a family member asks for help. Because you are a deeply caring person, you almost always say yes. But as the days go on, you find yourself completely drained, not because you lack compassion, but because you have split yourself into too many pieces. Think of your mental energy as a flowing river, just as Carl Jung once described. If you let that river branch off into too many tiny streams, it quickly loses its depth and its power to move forward. But when you gather those separate streams and force them to flow in a single direction, they gain enough strength to cut through solid rock. When you focus on yourself, you are simply gathering those scattered currents back together. This does not mean you have to become cold or isolate yourself from the world, but rather that you must stop letting every outside demand rule your mind. In psychology, this vital life force is called libido, a term most people mistake for physical desire, but which actually means so much more. This is the very essence of your life force, the inner engine that inspires you to think, create, take action, and grow. When you spend all your time worrying about others, trying to keep everyone happy and reacting to every minor event, you throw this precious energy outward. It is exactly like carrying a flashlight through a dark forest, but pointing it only at the trees around you until the battery dies and your own path is left in pitch black. But the moment you turn that focus back inward, you do not become selfish. Instead, you reclaim your power. Your scattered thoughts start to fall back into place. Your hazy goals become sharp and clear, and you realize you were never meant to carry everyone else's weight. You might realize that these patterns are simply deep-seated habits, born from a lifetime of trying to act as everyone else's emotional anchor. Consider the story of a woman named Anna. She was always the reliable one, the person everyone ran to, the second things went wrong in their lives. If a friend was grieving, she sat with them. If there was a bitter argument, she stepped in to play the peacemaker. But behind her helpful smile, she carried a heavy, silent exhaustion that she could never quite put into words. One night, after spending hours trying to resolve a toxic fight between two of her friends, she finally walked through her own front door, feeling completely hollowed out and empty inside. Her breakthrough only came when her therapist stopped her with an incredibly simple question: "How do you feel today?" Anna sat in total silence for a long time, suddenly realizing a terrifying truth: she could describe the emotional pain of every person in her life with perfect clarity, but she had absolutely no idea what was happening inside her own heart. That was the exact second she realized her life force had been pouring out of her for way too long. From that afternoon forward, she made a small but revolutionary promise to herself. Before she offered to help anyone else carry their burdens, she would pause, take a deep breath, and honestly ask herself if she had the emotional reserve to spare. In time, these brief moments of self-reflection allowed Anna to pull her energy back and rebuild a sense of harmony in her daily life. Carl Jung famously observed that the heaviest burden a child can carry is the unlived life of their parents. While we often think of this in terms of family dynamics, its truth applies to almost all of our close relationships. When you live your life focused entirely on others, you quietly take on their heavy expectations, their unhealed pain, and their unresolved drama. By doing this, you let your personal energy get hijacked by issues that are not yours to solve. Choosing to focus on yourself is simply the brave act of handing those heavy packages back to their rightful owners, recognizing that they must carry their own path. The moment you finally decide to drop the weight that was never yours to carry, an unexpected lightness washes over you. All that vital life force that had been slowly leaking out of you for years begins to rush back, like water finding its way home to a deep spring. You will notice this profound shift first as a gentle, unfolding stillness inside your mind. This is not a heavy, lonely silence, but rather the peaceful quiet of a glassy lake when the wind suddenly stops blowing. In this calm space, your thoughts become crystal clear, Your focus sharpens, and you suddenly realize that so many of the things that used to make you anxious are not actually worth a single ounce of your energy. What is truly amazing is that when we reclaim our energy and anchor it deep within, the people in our lives naturally start to treat us differently. This does not happen because you suddenly start speaking in a different way, but because your very presence has undergone a profound transformation. When you are centered, you project a quiet, unshakable stability that words cannot easily describe. You do not feel the constant need to explain yourself, yet everyone around you can instantly feel that you are standing on solid ground. It is this grounded energy that gives your words real weight. You will still care deeply for the people you love, but you will no longer lose yourself in their storms. If you stop and think about it, the real shift happens when you decide to stop letting your personal energy bleed out into the world. You and I both know how exhausting it is to constantly give from an empty cup. But when you build a quiet sanctuary within yourself, a solid core that belongs to you alone, everything changes. From this inner reservoir, you can support others naturally, giving from abundance rather than exhaustion. As you reclaim your scattered focus, your work gains a steady flow, and hard choices feel simple. No longer do you get dragged into petty dramas. Instead, you are like a rower who has finally found their rhythm, moving forward not by trying harder, but by heading in the right direction, a truth Carl Jung understood deeply. Once you gather and focus your inner strength, you no longer feel the constant, exhausting need to force things to happen. You simply let yourself glide along the clear, steady current that has opened up deep within you. When you stop letting your mental focus leak in 1,000 different directions, your mind naturally begins to quiet down. Within that profound stillness, a hidden door swings open, the very threshold to the deep inner world that Jung explored throughout his life. We often think of silence and deep focus as simple tools to organize our busy schedules, but the real truth is much bigger. They do not just stabilize your daily routine. They serve as the gateway to an incredibly vast inner exploration. As a quiet sense of order slowly settles over the surface of your daily life, you will notice that you no longer feel compelled to react instantly to every minor annoyance. You stop wasting your energy on meaningless arguments or endless, defensive explanations. This is the exact moment another path begins to reveal itself, leading directly into the quiet depths of your own soul. In the brilliant philosophy of Carl Jung, this is the sacred space where you begin the process of individuation. It is where your conscious mind and your hidden unconscious meet to slowly reshape who you are. This door only unlocks when your mind is peaceful enough to listen, showing you that this inner depth is not a mystical illusion. This profound stillness already lives deep inside of you, resting quietly beneath the shallow layers of your daily worries, quick reactions, and automatic thoughts. Yet, you rarely get to experience this space because your attention is constantly hijacked by the endless noise of the modern world. Phone notifications, doom scrolling through the news, and exhausting conversations pull at you from morning till night. Your mind becomes like the choppy surface of a lake, whipped by a relentless wind. Only when that wind finally dies down and the water turns to glass can you see what lies at the very bottom. Real focus is what stills your mind, letting you cross this threshold without needing any complex rituals. You will find that this transformation usually starts with incredibly tiny moments of quiet scattered throughout your ordinary day. It might be nothing more than sitting in absolute silence for 5 minutes after powering down all your screens in the evening, giving your mind a rare chance to unplug from the endless stream of data. Or perhaps it is that brief, conscious pause you take before firing back a defense when someone criticizes you, letting your emotions settle. These tiny actions might seem trivial, but they are like the first steps of an inward path, serving as keys that gradually unlock your deeper soul. Chances are, you have lived through a moment exactly like this at some point. Think of those late, solitary nights when the entire house is asleep and the world outside has finally gone completely quiet. There are no buzzing screens, no endless social obligations, and no voices to distract you. As you lie there in the dark, sudden waves of old memories begin to wash over you, and long-forgotten questions push their way to the surface. You find yourself wondering why you chose this career path, or what actually matters to your heart. It is a raw space that often makes people feel deeply uneasy, driving them to turn on a television show or scroll on their phones just to escape the terrifying silence. Yet, Carl Jung always stressed that it is right at the edge of this quiet discomfort where you truly begin to touch your authentic self. If you can find the courage to stand your ground and step forward into that stillness, you enter the exact place where real healing and psychological transformation take root. Fascinatingly, modern neuroscience completely backs up this ancient insight. Brain researchers have discovered that when you pull away from external distractions and rest, a unique neural highway called the default mode network fires up. This amazing system is what allows your brain to organize memories, synthesize deep emotions, and construct a cohesive, authentic sense of who you are. The moment this neural network takes over, your brain actively starts sorting through past experiences, weaving them into a meaningful story and linking distant parts of your mind. What modern laboratory science describes with cold, biological terms is the exact truth Jung saw decades ago. He famously wrote that your vision becomes clear only when you look directly into your own heart. It is only when you turn your gaze inward and listen to your own voice that your life path reveals itself. But you cannot fake this kind of depth. You cannot simply put on a mask of serenity while your mind is screaming, nor can you trick yourself into peace by mindlessly chanting positive phrases. True inner depth only opens up when your stillness is completely honest, and when you are willing to sit with your rawest thoughts without trying to sugarcoat or dress up your painful emotions. When you finally allow that to happen, a beautiful sense of integration begins to take shape inside your mind. All the scattered fragments of your memories, daily stresses, and complicated feelings slowly start to lock back into place. You will feel as though you are finally standing on solid ground, where your thoughts are clear and orderly. Historically, ancient spiritual traditions have always revered quietness as the ultimate path to truth, like a monk meditating to look directly at reality. Think about how ancient mystics fled loud, chaotic cities, not because they hated humanity, but because they wanted to discover the profound reality waiting inside their own souls. Carl Jung realized that these historical figures represent a powerful, universal archetype built deep into our collective psyche, known as the archetype of the hermit. This is the timeless image of a solitary traveler walking away from the screaming crowd, holding a single, glowing lantern to light their path through the pitch-black woods. That light is your conscious awareness, and the surrounding dark is your deep unconscious. By choosing quiet focus, you are stepping onto that very same path, searching through the dark to find your light. What is truly incredible is how your entire worldview begins to shift the moment you touch this inner wellspring. The exhausting habit of comparing your life to others suddenly loses its power over you, and the harsh judgments of outsiders no longer rattle your confidence. You start to feel a deep, unshakable sense that you are standing firmly on your own 2 feet, free from the heavy weight of everyone else's expectations. Your words and actions take on a powerful new resonance, carrying the unmistakable weight of true presence. You cease to be a fragile leaf blown about by the chaotic winds of luck, and instead become a mighty tree with roots sunk deep into the earth. These quiet moments are far more than simple stress relief exercises to help you get through a bad week. They are a profound gateway, a portal leading you far away from the chaotic noise of modern survival and into the quiet room where true healing occurs. It is an opening that allows you to meet your true self at the deepest level of your being. Once you step through, you realize the most important path of your entire life is not traveling across continents, but seeking the truth within your own soul. When you reach this depth, the way you show up in the world changes completely. And strangely, as number 5 on our list shows, your outer world begins to fall into place when you become quiet. As you begin to align your daily choices with your authentic self, a beautifully strange phenomenon starts to unfold in your life. The external world around you begins to mirror the quiet transformation taking place deep inside your chest. Situations that once felt impossibly tangled suddenly begin to unravel and clear up. Exhausting relationships that used to drain your energy naturally drift away or shift into healthier boundaries. Career opportunities that once felt light years out of reach suddenly present themselves at the exact moment you are ready. Skeptical onlookers might call this luck or coincidence, but Jung knew it was a profound resonance between your inner and outer worlds. The moment you shift your internal state, the way you respond to the world shifts, causing your outer reality to rearrange itself. Carl Jung famously defined this beautiful phenomenon as synchronicity, which we can think of as highly meaningful coincidences. He believed that when you live in harmony with your true self, the events of your life stop looking like random, chaotic accidents. Instead, they begin to link together in ways that defy normal logic. It is not that the physical world magically altered overnight, but that you have finally found your natural rhythm within the flow of existence. You become like a fine instrument. When one string is plucked, the others vibrate in harmony. You can think of silence and deep focus as the essential process of tuning the delicate instrument of your mind. When you are properly in tune, the music of your life naturally begins to play with a beautiful, effortless order. You and I have likely both lived through two completely opposite phases of existence. There are those exhausting times when your mind is pure chaos, where you overthink every detail, snap at loved ones, and get dragged into pointless conflicts. In those frantic phases, your external life spirals into a mess. Work stalls, relationships suffer, and choices feel impossible. But then, there are those calm chapters where you feel centered, focused, and completely at peace. Sometimes, you might feel a sudden, quiet shift in the air, like a door opening exactly when you need it to. We have all had those moments where the perfect person crosses your path out of nowhere, or a brilliant solution flashes in your mind just as you are about to give up. What used to feel impossibly tangled suddenly untangles itself with total ease. This is not some cheap magic trick. It is a fundamental shift in how your mind operates. Carl Jung believed your mind is not some isolated island floating in a dark void. Instead, you are plugged into a vast, hidden reservoir he called the collective unconscious. Deep down there, every symbol, memory, and ancient human energy is quietly talking to one another, waiting for you to tune in. The moment you begin living in true alignment with who you really are, you start vibrating at the exact frequency of that deeper layer. That resonance is where the magic happens, pulling meaningful coincidences into your daily life. These are not supernatural miracles, but simple, natural reflections between your inner thoughts and the outer world. Think of your mind as a mirror. If the glass is caked in thick dust, the world you see reflected back is going to look warped and cloudy. But the second you wipe that glass clean, everything becomes sharp. Life is exactly the same way. When your days are filled with endless distractions, constant stress, and loud, chaotic noise, the reality you experience will inevitably mirror that inner mess. Choosing to sit in silence and find your focus is how you wipe away the grime from your inner mirror. Once that glass is spotless, the life reflected in it naturally becomes crystal clear. Everything starts sliding into its proper place, not because some external force rewrote the universe, but because you transformed how you look at it. Think about it. Have you ever decided to buy a specific type of car, and suddenly you see that exact model on every single street corner? Those cars were always there, but your brain just filtered them out. Now that your mind is locked in, you notice them everywhere. Life operates on this exact frequency. The moment you focus on your personal growth, you start spotting opportunities, mentors, and paths that were waiting for you all along. Whatever receives your attention is bound to expand within your daily reality. Here is the vital truth we need to remember. The way your life reorganizes itself is not some external miracle dropping from the heavens. It is the natural, effortless byproduct of a mind that has finally established order from within. Imagine you are captaining a small sailboat out on the open sea. If you let go of the rudder, the wild waves will toss your boat in every direction, leaving you stranded. But the second you grip that wheel firmly and steer toward a specific point on the horizon, the vessel cuts a straight line through the water. The ocean is still massive and unpredictable, but you are in control. Silence and deep focus are how you take back the wheel. Once your grip on the wheel is solid, the crashing waves around you lose their power to knock you off balance. You can look at so many people who have gone through this exact shift. They finally walk away from a dead-end job that drains their soul so they can chase a creative dream. They summon the courage to leave long-term relationships that have gone cold and lifeless. Or they quietly exit noisy, toxic social circles to protect their energy, spending their weekends reading, learning, and building their minds instead. Yes, making these choices usually brings a wave of self-doubt, isolation, and harsh whispers from critics. But if you hold the line, a beautiful shift begins to happen, and the right allies start showing up. Slowly, you find yourself stepping into spaces where you actually belong, surrounded by people who speak your language. You start hitting milestones and seeing results that once felt like distant, impossible fantasies. Do not mistake this for mere luck. It is the natural consequence of aligning your daily actions with your true, authentic path. Still, Carl Jung always made sure to point out a crucial detail. You cannot fake a frequency you do not actually have. So many people try to force a positive vibe, chanting daily mantras, posting highly filtered photos on social media, or putting on a brave face. But if your inner world is still screaming with doubt and panic, that friction will always leak out. While you might fool the people around you with a shiny exterior, the deepest chambers of your mind, the unconscious, cannot be lied to. It knows your true state, and that core frequency is what actually dictates how the universe responds to you. So, when your days start feeling incredibly messy, the issue might not be the world outside. It is usually just a warning light, showing that you have drifted away from your own center. In those moments, chasing more answers out there in the noise will only make it worse. The fix is actually much simpler than that. You have to pause, step into the silence, lock in your focus. If you can stay in that space, you will witness something incredible. You do not have to force anything to change. By shifting your inner climate, you allow life to naturally realign itself without any extra effort on your part. Things start clicking into place, not because you are pulling every single string, but because you finally came home to your true self. When you step back and look at the big picture, the most powerful thing you can do is not some grand, theatrical gesture. The deepest changes often begin with the simple, quiet act of stopping. Stopping before you react in anger. Stopping before you scramble to explain yourself. Stopping just long enough to actually hear your own thoughts. In that stillness, you will realize that living does not require nearly as much control as we try to force upon it. As your mind recovers its true center and you stop scattering your energy on fake roles and noisy distractions, a profound clarity sets in. Whatever is not meant for you will gently slide away without any drama. At the same time, the things meant for your true path will begin to arrive. Carl Jung once wisely pointed out that those who only look outside are merely dreaming, while those who look inside are the ones who finally wake up. Once you experience that awakening, you realize that peace never came from trying to micromanage your surroundings. It comes from finding the stillness inside yourself. In that quiet, you do not have to struggle to fix your life. Everything simply falls right back into place.